Welcome to the inaugural Rule the Wasteland podcast. I'm the Lord Humongous, also known as Eric, if you want to know my slave name. So I appreciate you guys tuning in. I had sent a YouTube video asking for requests for questions, topics, and stuff like that for the first inaugural Rule the Wasteland podcast, and a lot of people responded. Well, not a ton, but I got like 25 or 30 good questions. So I'm just going to go ahead and kick it off and start answering those on this podcast, and if it takes longer than like an hour, I'm probably not going to let any of these run longer than an hour unless I get like a kick-ass interview or something like that. But if this starts to run long, then I'll just break it up and do another episode on viewer questions too. So I got some pretty cool questions, and I will just kick it off and start answering those, starting with the oldest one first, which is, let me see here. Yeah, here we go. From Thingamajigger. Do you consider PMs to be overvalued or undervalued right now? Why? Where are you focusing your fiat at the moment? So our PMs, precious metals, for those of you who don't know the parlance of our times, are PMs undervalued or overvalued right now? Now, there's a difference, in my opinion, between price and value. Being value what it's worth to you as an individual and in your particular situation, in the current geopolitical climate, all that stuff, and then price is what you're going to be paying in local currency to get that. In that sense, I think that they're definitely priced attractively in terms of what value they can bring to us as individuals. Because gold and silver, I've done videos on these before, I'll probably do more in the future. They're very attractive as a way to safeguard your wealth or store your wealth. They're not great as a way to earn money or an investment per se, because there's no income generation from gold and silver. There's actually costs associated with buying, selling, and storing it sometimes. And so if as an investment, you would only be betting on simple appreciation. And since gold isn't even used in a lot of industrial uses like silver, it's pretty much the same as like buying art, in the sense that you're just hoping that later someone's going to buy it. With the exception that gold actually has some intrinsic value in its use as a currency, and that's what it's been used for thousands of years. So in that sense, I think that it is undervalued by most people. People talk about it being a barbarous relic and stuff like that, and in that sense, it's vastly undervalued when you walk up to the average person and get their opinion on gold. Check the price of gold versus an hour of human labor and what it would take to get gold, and compare that historically. And there's a lot of ways that you can measure whether gold is what it should be priced at in local economies. But in general, I think in almost every metric, the amount of work it would take you to get gold and silver is very, very impressive right now in terms of how easy it is to get on almost any historical scale. So in that sense, especially long-term historical scale. So in that sense, I think it's very attractive, and I am definitely in favor of people collecting it in as a prepping item. I don't think it should be your only financial preparation, because it's not a quote-unquote investment. It doesn't generate income. It's great for prepping. It's not great for just everyday kind of diverse streams of income, building up your financial basically fortress that you want to have for yourself, breaking free from your the job paradigm and all that stuff. It's not great for all that. You really wouldn't need income for that. So in that sense, you shouldn't put 100% of your economic preparedness resources into something like gold and silver. You definitely need to have that base, but you got to develop diverse streams of income, different types of income sources that are not related to having to be dependent on the government or someone else. So where if I focusing my fiat at the moment, I'm not actually making a ton of extra money right now. I'm definitely focusing on income generation, so I'm always just saving. I have a decent chunk of gold and silver, and for the time being, I'm saving up a little bit of cash. I'm always looking for ways to increase income. So that's what I'm focusing my extra money on at the moment. Always a little bit of percentage is going to go towards gold and silver. If I were to get like a lottery winning or something, you better believe I'd buy another big chunk of gold and silver. But the majority of it at that point, once you have your core position, you want to focus on income generation. So that's what I would focus my fiat if I got a big chunk of it, whether that's dividend-paying stocks in safe, long-term companies that have been around for a while, income-producing real estate like rentals or farmland, stuff like that, real assets. That's where you need to focus your fiat. Next question. I spent a long time on that one. Definitely will probably take me more than an hour to get through these if that's the normal rate. Next question, what's your best method for off-the-grid cooking, clean water, and fire starting? So these are going to be some long questions. So what's my best method? It depends. I think the off-the-grid cooking can mean a lot of things. If you can, any way you can cook not connected to the grid, I think the best method would just be gas. Next to that would be anything else like wood or something like that. And you still have resources that you need that you're dependent on, but you're not necessarily connected to the grid if you have a propane tank. And that's certainly the easiest. The obviously something like a solar oven or a solar cooker is going to be great because you can't run out of the resource necessary to use it. So even in 50 years, if there's no infrastructure, you could still use a solar cooker. It's just very dependent on your local weather. Clean water, a well is obviously a great way to get clean water. And depending on any issues in your area with runoff, minerals, and some water has sulfur in it and stuff like that you'll have to deal with. But in general, it will be fairly much cleaner from a well than if you just scooped it out of a lake or a drainage ditch or something. But you always want to have a way to clean it, even if that's just boiling and running it through a sand filter. Fire starting, nothing beats just Zippos or Bic lighters and matches. The lighters are basically invincible. People like to hate on the lighters, but having a box of them lying around, you're getting thousands of lights. They're extremely reliable. Very rarely do they fail, and if they do, if you have a box of them sitting there, it's no big deal. I like to have a big Fresnel lens because just like the solar oven, relying on the power of the sun, it's never going to run out. And around here, on a normal day, you can start a fire with that thing in 5 seconds. It's basically a magnifying glass that also has parabolic curves to it so that it focuses. The focal point of multiple different magnifying glasses are focused in the same place, basically, to give you a brief explanation. So it can start fires. The big ones can melt nickels and stuff like that, get insane temperatures. So you actually want to be careful with these things. If you leave it sitting against something where there's sunlight, it can start a fire. You're not even paying attention. What next part of that was from Azura Blue, that question too. Next part is, what prep foods are your favorite and easiest to make? Rice, hands down. Obviously, anything canned is easiest to make because they're already cooked. So all you have to do is warm it up. A lot of situations you wouldn't even have to warm it. Just crack open a can and eat it. So rice is my favorite of all the long-term storage foods. I eat a lot of rice anyway, and I just like it. What books would you recommend for a beginning prepper? I would recommend the Country Living Handbook, and I would recommend Fairfall's book, Surviving the Economic Collapse. Those are both excellent books. And if you want to see the starting, like what's kicked off the whole modern prepper movement, then you can read Mel Tappan's books, like Survival. He's basically the godfather of modern survival and prepping movement before the James Wesley Rawls and all those people. What guns do you recommend for daily carry, and which shotgun do you like? For daily carry, the old adage goes, the best gun is the one that you're actually going to carry. So it's better to carry a little 25 Beretta Bobcat than it is to not carry like a Glock 21. Even though the Glock 21 is, by every metric, a much better gun, the one that you have with you and are going to be able to carry frequently without being uncomfortable, without having to wear all the special clothes and special holsters and all this stuff, that's the one that you want to carry. So personally, I prefer 380s and above. I think anything less than that is really underpowered. Certainly you can still save your life with any gun, and even just presenting a gun is usually enough to stop a lot of heinous situations that you want to get out of. But the technology has gotten pretty good that when there's a lot of 380s out there, and even 9mm like the Walther PPS, I think it's a PPS, that is a really thin single stack 9mm. They're just so tiny that there's just no reason to go lower than a 380. So I recommend like a Kel-Tec, or the Ruger LCP is what I have as my small carry gun. I do have a Beretta Tomcat, which is a 32, but there's just no reason to carry that when you can have the Kel-Tec or something with a larger caliber. What shotgun do you like? I've always liked the Mossbergs. I mean, obviously, you can go more expensive with like the Benellis and stuff, but if you're just talking about your basic run-of-the-mill tactical 12-gauge, there's no reason to go out there and spend a lot of money unless you are just big into guns and that's what you want to do. You can get a Walmart shotgun for $200, $250, and it's going to do just fine. Personally, I've always liked the Mossbergs and never had any issues with them at all. Do you have an area of the country or state you think is great to escape to when the shit hits the fan? That's one of those questions that it just all depends. Shit hit the fan is a term that can use, or that can mean anything. So, if the Yellowstone super caldera blows up, then, the entire western half of the U.S. is not going to be a great place to be. If there's some sort of, economic collapse, then you just want to be somewhere where there's good weather, low potential for natural disasters and disease spreading. So the South is going to be worse for disease because there's the warm weather, the mosquitoes and stuff like that. But the North is going to be really hard to survive when it gets cold if you don't have any infrastructure. So it really depends on your personal preference, what you think would be worse or better, what you're suited to deal with better. But in general, you probably don't want to be inside a huge population center. I think the best bet is to be in a small town, not a tiny town, but a smaller town, if you had a choice. But, base your life around the things that you know you're going to have to do. Don't base your life around or move somewhere just based on what would be best if the shit hit the fans. When the shit hits the fan, if you can base your life on making a ton of money, preparing yourself financially, or just where you need to be with your family and stuff like that. Because when it comes down to it, prepping's supposed to be about making your life better overall, not just about what would be best for when the shit hits the fan. Because hopefully there won't be a serious shit hit the fan situation like that in our lifetimes. There certainly could be, that's why we prepare, but you don't want to base your whole life around that. Next question. So now I'm getting super slow. This is definitely going to probably move into the 2-episode podcast here. Next question is from Captain Crunk. Are you single? How easy has it been for you to find people to date? Consider your prepping, self-sufficient, authority-questioning lifestyle. I'm a dude, by the way. No homo, right? That's the ubiquitous no homo quotes. Totally straight, too. Just wondering because I've had my own challenges finding girls with open minds. So first question, are you single? I am not single. I've actually been with my girlfriend for a ridiculously long time. In August, it will be 10 years. It's crazy. Shocking even myself. I have panic attacks about it like every 6 months. I feel like I need to strip off all my clothes and run off into the woods like the Aborigine guy in the end of Quigley Down Under. How easy has it been for you to find people to date considering your prep? Obviously, that hasn't been an issue because I haven't been on a date in a decade. So, never had to worry about, what the hell is that thing called? The app. Tinder. Swiping left or right. Man, I didn't even have a fucking cell phone when I came up to college. I'm so old. It says, in my authority questioning lifestyle, she doesn't like that, but she's obviously on board with what I do, and it's always just been part of my personality anyway. I think, and honestly, if you were to know me, it would take, if I were to start dating again, if my girlfriend died in a horrible smelting accident or something, and, I waited the prerequisite amount of mourning time, 2 weeks before I started dating again, or whatever you're supposed to do. And I did have to start dating. People would have to be going out with me for months before they even knew that I did anything weird unless I mentioned it myself, because I'm not like in some trapper's cabin in the woods. If you come into my house, unless you're opening doors and you see that I have an unusual amount of canned goods in one of these rooms, in my storage room, and or you think it's weird to have chickens, there's nothing that would really get in the way of dating someone. The authority questioning could be an issue, but if someone had a problem with me, with just any really aspect of my lifestyle, I would next them so fast that it just wouldn't even be an issue. So that's what I think you should do. If you really just are having issues with telling people to hit the road if they don't like what you do, then you're just going to have to make a choice at that point about which is more important to you. And if you want to have to go more underground with your preps to kind of hide it, but I don't recommend hiding something that's important to you. You can maybe evaluate and say, hey, am I being crazy about this? If a lot of people seem to think that you're going overboard in some areas, it's maybe time to examine it and just see. But if you decide that, nope, this is what I need to do, then to hell with anyone who thinks it's stupid. Move on. Next question. Your Aunt B. Would like to know what you learned from your 4-week challenge to eat food from your stores. For those of you who haven't been watching my YouTube videos or missed this one, a few months ago I did a video, I think it was back in November maybe. I did a video saying that I was going to eat only a month from my stored foods, and I never did the follow-up with that. So basically the operation was a success. I wasn't going to worry about cooking any off-the-grid scenario. I was going to cook just like I normally did, and I wasn't going to go too out of the way. Like I had a birthday dinner I went to. So overall, I think for the entire month, I maybe ate 4 or 5 meals. Definitely less than 10 meals for the month that were not part of my food storage. And overall, it was a success. I store food that I know I like, and so it wasn't an issue that way. I store various kinds of food, and honestly, I think my attempts to store a varied diet were actually not necessary because I purposefully tried to make it varied. So I actually ended up storing stuff that I don't normally eat just for the sake of having some variety in the food, which was sort of a mistake because when it came down to it, I didn't want to vary my diet any more than I normally do. So that was the only part that I was like, you know what, I don't even need to vary it that much. Why do I need to, if my diet's okay normally, I don't need to vary it more often. So The one thing I did notice is I was lazy with the preparation, so I was much more likely to just crack open a can of something than I was to dip into like the dry goods, like the beans and the rice that had to actually be cooked. Even though I do have a rice cooker, it's still much more easier to just get a can of Spam, whatever. And I definitely need to focus on the protein sources. I probably need to up that because it's very, very easy to store a lot of calories with rice and beans, oats, stuff like that, and than it is to store stuff with meats and protein sources because there's not a lot of options for long-term storage for those things. You have your canned meats, you have like powdered eggs, powdered milk, stuff like that, and that's about it. And there's not a lot of good options for the canned meats. I like Spam. I don't have a problem with it. Fry it up in a pan, and I actually think it tastes good. I mean, I ate it always, even not even considering prepping type options, but a lot of people just can't stomach that stuff. And there's a lot of the other ones. I don't think I found any other kind of canned meats that I like. So that's what I learned, is that it was worked out pretty well, but I need to focus. Don't worry so much about variety beyond what I normally eat, and make sure you have your protein sources. Next question. D. James LaSalle says, what hair care products do you have in your bug out bag? Man, despite the fact that I have a luxurious flowing mane that's the envy of men and women alike, if there were any serious sort of shit hit the fan situation that required me to actually use a bug out bag, the only hair care product I would use would be a knife. This mop would come off my head so fast that I would not spend 1 hour messing with this freaking rat's nest on my head if there was any sort of serious situation. It already pisses me off when I'm trying to work out and stuff. I got these like do-rags that I wear when I actually have to do any sort of work. So, I mean, I would just cut that off so quick that it would not be a problem. So I do have shampoo in there, but probably wouldn't even be necessary because I would just shave my head. Drew Edmonds says, what motivates you on prepping? In other words, what do you consider to be the most realistic scenarios? I'm a casual prepper because I live in an earthquake zone, so I try to be self-sufficient for 30 days, and I like to be somewhat prepared for any unforeseen events. But I'm not even close to a full-out doomsday prepper. Doomsday stuff makes for great movies, asteroids, EMPs, aliens, total economic collapse, full-blown revolutions, etc. But those are mostly fantasy situations. Are there any events that truly scare you that you seriously might think happen, or is it just an amusing hobby for its own sake? Suppose where you live, hurricanes are the most obvious. Being a geek, I admit prepping can be kind of a fun hobby. Like any hobby, some people take it to extremes. I don't have potassium iodine pills or Geiger counters. So, I think I cut that one off. Anyways, I think there's more to that comment. But there's plenty of comments there, so I'll address that. I actually do have potassium iodine pills. I don't think that... I mean, honestly, the only realistic, like, major shit hit the fan situations that I can think of would be like a nuclear war. Obviously, I don't think that's likely. It is realistic. It definitely can happen, but it's not likely. An EMP type situation that goes right along with that, maybe a massive solar flare or a result of nuclear weapons, that would be probably one of the worst things, would be something involving nuclear EMP, because those are the only things that are really going to kill the entire infrastructure. Anything else, economic collapse, all natural disasters are fairly localized, even when they're huge, like a hurricane. I mean, all you have to do is get a few states over, or even just leave the country if it was an emergency. So, I mean, certainly something like a bug-out bag with a few weeks' supplies of food in it would serve you in a situation like that, because worst case scenario, you would just leave if you could. So I think the only realistic major scenarios would be nuclear or EMP, and I don't think they're very likely to happen. And if you do think they're likely to happen, then you need to totally revamp your lifestyle to be basically homestead, self-sufficient, Amish style, because that's the only way you'd be able to deal with that for more than like a year or 6 months. And it's going to be very hard to do that if you, even with just like 6 months preparation. So my plan, if something crazy like that did happen, would just be to survive for 6 months or whatever, and then try to assess the situation. If it hasn't been fixed, maybe leave or something. But luckily, I think that's an extremely low event situation, and to be adequately prepared for something like that, you would have to spend a lot of time and money to be completely self-sufficient. So I don't think it's a problem to have it as a hobby. I do think it's useful and necessary to have some level of preparation, but I think for the average person who just doesn't see a reason for it, I mean, just make sure you have your 30 days of food squared away. I try to push it out to 6 months for me, for 2 people and the pets, and that's a lot of stuff. 6 months is a long time. Beyond that, I don't think there's any reason to store stuff for that long, because if you really want to be prepared for more than 6 months, then like I said, you need to focus on basically an Amish homestead type lifestyle where you are supplying everything for yourself. So I don't think there's going to be doomsday asteroids, aliens, even an economic collapse. The grid's going to be up. Anything that doesn't take out the grid in a large portion of the country is just going to make life shitty, but it's not going to get Mad Max. Because there's been a lot of shitty situations that have happened throughout history, and almost none of them had ended with a Mad Max scenario type situation. You know what I mean? Life just gets shitty. But everyone has a vested interest in keeping some semblance of society afloat, some semblance of commerce, keeping infrastructure supported to at least some extent. So everything will get spotty, everything will get shitty, but it's not going to be the end of the world. That's why money is usually the most important thing to have in an economic collapse situation. For everything else, 30, 60, 90 days worth of stuff will go a long way in preparing you for like 99% of any situation. So definitely self-sufficient for 30 days. That's an awesome goal. If you get it taken care of, you can rest easy for most of the situations that have happened throughout history. And you should be good to go. You'll be way ahead of the sheeple, that's for sure. If you could choose, here's Eric22552 says, if you could choose 10 YouTube preppers to be with when shit hits the fan, who would they be and why? Living in the South, it can get very hot. If the grid goes out, what precautions will you take to keep yourself cool? Would your workload be done more at night or during the day? Would you be involved in rebuilding or building a community? So there's a few questions. First one, if you could use 10 YouTube preppers to be with when shit hit the fan happens. Damn, I don't even know if if I'm not subscribed to that many preppers, and I certainly can't think of them off the top of my head. But I would probably try and I'd like to Southern Prepper 1 and Engineer 775, is that it? He's obviously got a squared away setup there, and Engineer 775 has come up with some great off the grid like power supplies and come up with all sorts of crazy situations like that. So those guys would be very useful to have around. I know Southern Prepper 1 has some military infantry background. That'd be useful. Bibles and Barbells is another one. I watch his stuff. He could be my lifting buddy. You need someone to spot you even after the apocalypse. He's great in fitness and that sort of thing. Who else we got? Analytical survival. He may be a pain to have around because you don't want you to line everything up in alphabetical order, but he's got some special forces medic experience, and that could definitely come in handy, that's for sure. And he's pretty squared away as well. And who else we got in here? YouTube preppers. I'm not looking at my YouTube channel right now, so I'm trying to just think off the top of my head what are some of these channels. So I guess we get Patriot Nurse, keep it from being a total sausage fest. You gotta have some females around in case you gotta repopulate the planet either. And obviously more medical experience the better, so that'd be useful. And beyond that, I'm not even thinking of a lot of YouTube preppers. I like Jewish Prepper's channel. His stuff is good. He probably wouldn't be bad to have around. But damn, yeah, it would turn into a sausage fest. We got to get some more female preppers. Somebody send me some comments on this video and tell me some YouTube channels that have some female preppers. So if someone asks me this situation again, I can figure out a better answer. Next question. Maybe I will get through all these. It's only been about, 20 minutes? 30 minutes? Something like that. Next question, Harlow1. What got you into prepping in the first place? I'm always curious to hear people's stories. Also, why the Mad Max scene? Keep up the good work, man. Alright, what got you into prepping in the first place? For me, it was just a slow, slow evolution based on my personality. There was no, single event that kind of woke me up to it. That's just my personality. I'm a saver. I'm a preparer. When I am presented with a situation, my mind automatically thinks of all the different scenarios that can happen. Obviously, that's not good when you if you let that anxiety kind of take over you, but it is useful for finding out the different things that can happen and preparing for them. So I guess from all the way back when my mom taught me not to ride my bike by storm drains because I was going to get sucked in or whatever, up through Y2K when I was basically in high school. And just always wanted to be prepared for things that happen. It always seemed crazy to me to not take simple measures that could easily prepare you for just normal stuff that definitely happens. It happens all the time throughout history. And even though I don't think it gets serious that often, really serious, stuff like hurricanes, stuff like job loss, stuff like localized shit hit the fans, obviously there's economic issues that are coming up. It's fairly easy to jump way ahead of the average person in preparedness and just save a lot of issues. So I'm definitely that's my personality. It's just to prepare, and I like to be prepared for every situation that I get into. Why the Mad Max theme? I just like the movie, the Mad Max. It's a quintessential, a post-apocalyptic movie of a crazy, it's just the quintessential post-apocalyptic movie. That's it. And I've always liked the bad guys in these movies more than the good guys. They're less conflicted. They always know what they want, and they just kick ass going for it. They usually lose in the movies, but they always have cooler stuff. So that's pretty much it. Next question, Kev RS2. Can you tell me how many cans of beans are too many? No amount of beans is too many. No, but the serious answer to this question, and this goes for pretty much anything that you're storing or doing for your prepping, is that when it ceases to add value to your life, that's when you know that it is too many. So that could be, for some people, that could be 5 cans of beans, and you just decided that you don't want to be a prepper. And I'm not here to tell anyone that you should be a prepper, that you should prepare. I think it'd be kind of foolish not to, but the goal here is to enhance your life, not to save it at all costs. I agree that life is not so dear or so sweet to be purchased at the price of chains or slavery. And I also think that it's not so precious that you should ruin it basically just so that you can extend it if something crazy were to happen. So if your life is becoming miserable, or like the dating thing that the earlier guy was talking about, take that stuff into consideration, because the overall goal is not prepping. The overall goal is enhancing your life. So do what you need to do to enhance your life. For me personally, having a moderate amount of preparedness greatly enhances my life, and enhances my peace of mind, and it enhances my freedom, because you're clear from these systems of support. And that's why money comes into it so much for me. Trying to create, not like being rich or whatever, but breaking free from like the job paradigm. And I got a lot of negative comments on the video I did, like the most important prep to have for economic collapse is money, because people are like, oh, you're not gonna money after an economic collapse, you're not gonna need money, you're just gonna have to go around picking corn out of shit to eat or whatever. I don't know what these people think. But for me, it's all about, prepping is all about freedom. And one of the main things to do to be free in your life is to break free from the normal job paradigm that everyone's stuck with. And to do that, you have to create other sources of income to be able to do that. They say the greatest form of freedom is the ability to determine your future. So, and that's where you live, what you do, what time you wake up in the morning, whether you have to hold your shit in or not, or whether you can go to the bathroom when you want. And that is usually, more often, controlled by normal, everyday type stuff than it is by disasters. So prepping for me covers that too. Like, I want to prepare for the future to be free, to enhance my life. So that's what I do. So when it comes down to beans, as many as you need to enhance your life. Anything beyond that, get rid of it. Someone, less view, says, test sounds good. Topic, long-term food storage. That's a good topic. I'll probably do a podcast on that coming up. Can't wait for the show. Are you putting it on iTunes and Stitcher? I'm going to be honest, I don't have any experience with Stitcher. I don't know anything about it. I will look into that. iTunes is a plan. I've heard from some people that it is kind of a pain to get it up there. It'll be immediately available on SoundCloud player that I will just put on the website. I'm also going to put the audio on YouTube, so you'll have a way to watch it if you want. I know some people just prefer YouTube. There won't be any video to go along with it, but I'll just pick a static image and put the audio on YouTube. And if you want to download it, though, you're probably going to want to use SoundCloud because it's easier. There's going to be a download link right on the button. But if you don't have a preference, I guess I prefer that you watch it on YouTube, because I actually do get some sort of kickback from the AdSense ads that play there. So if you really don't care either way, I guess watch it on YouTube. But yeah, I do plan on getting it on iTunes, and just for free. I'm not going to sell it or anything. And so when that happens, I'll let you guys know, because I've heard that the ratings, having a decent number of ratings on there, can make a big difference. So I'll let you guys know when it's up there, and if you guys could just bombard it with amazing ratings. You know, if you think it's shitty, rate it low. But either way, I'd like to get honest ratings up there, so I'll let you guys know when that happens. In the meantime, Captain Scarlet says, what is your favorite rifle, also bladed weapon, i.e. tomahawk, machete, axe, etc.? Etc. My favorite rifle, honestly, there's a difference here, because favorite is not necessarily best for any particular situation. My favorite rifle, my favorite rifle I've ever shot is the Barrett 50 cal. I had the opportunity to shoot that as part of my military training. One of the field exercises we went on, we got to shoot a lot of cool weaponry, and that was one of them. That thing was just so fucking badass to shoot, and it just doesn't get much cooler than that. But in terms of like just best overall rifle, you're probably going to want to go with an AK or an AR variant. And beyond that, it's just down to preference. I mean, you could argue all day about which one of those is quote-unquote better, but it comes down to which metrics you think are more important. I personally don't have an AR right now, and I really want to get one because I've just spent a lot of time training with them because of the military. A lot of it is just very natural to me now, very instinctive to operate it. And I can take them apart and fix them fairly easily. I have a lot of experience breaking them down and cleaning them and everything like that. So I would like to get one of those. And as far as bladed weapons, I don't like axes. I mean, as a weapon, I don't like having to swing something that slowly. So I would go with a machete or a sword type thing like that. Someone said, Turkey Man said, thumbed for using the word hobo. Thumbs up for hobo. I use the word hobo all the time. It's a great word. I think bum doesn't accurately describe the kind of derelict Cro-Magnon that you can see out there. I like to use the word hobo. It's also much more antiquated. Gives you the idea of someone who's just really just committed to a life of on the road of poverty and squalor and isn't just a drunk or something. 007 Wet says, can I hear the story that woke you up to the collapse? Well, like I was saying before, if you're talking about just prepping in general, there is no real story. That's just my personality. I've always been a looking ahead, preparing for tomorrow type of person. And honestly, that's one of the things that makes work so hard for me. And being stuck in the job paradigm so hard for me is because when I go in for work every day, I don't go in for that day. I'm envisioning, every day I wake up, I envision the next 30 years, and that makes it really hard. So I just have that vision for the future, for better or worse. But in terms of like the economic collapse or the pending current economic problems that we're having, there was no one incident. I mean, I just remember anyone who's knows math and even a basic level of economics will figure out that things aren't right. And I remember looking at these calculations that people even like Dave Ramsey would do and say, oh, if you get the stock market's average 12% over the years or whatever, so you put your money for 50 or 30 years, you get this much money. I'm like, wow, that's a lot of money. That's awesome. And then so I'm like, wow, I wonder if what if you were immortal and you lived for like 500 years? And then these numbers just got ridiculous. And I was like, wait a second, this doesn't make any sense. How could it get 10% every year? Eventually you would have all the money, and where's all this money coming from? And you just start to realize that the monetary system is a little bit screwed up and just doesn't make any sense. And at the time, as a kid, maybe 12 years old or whatever, I just figured I didn't really know how it worked. And then you figure out that it's even worse than not understanding it. It really is that ridiculous. And then you start to see all the things that the government is doing on an economic sense that are just destroying our chances for an easy future, economically speaking, and that it's just not good going forward. So there's no way you can really even casually study that kind of stuff and think that everything's just going to end up all hunky-dory. And if there's any one source that explained it better, I think, than anything else to me, to where I really felt like I was just like, man, that's it, I get it now, is Chris Martinson's Crash Course. So if you hadn't seen that, watch it. It talks about the coming peak everything, basically. Energy, economics, all that, like demographics. A lot of problems are coming to a head. What happened to the silver? Did you cash in? Like I mentioned, silver for me is not about an investment, so I don't hold it waiting to sell it when it's worth more specifically. I just hold it like I would hold cash. It's a place to put my money that's safe, and then when I need it, I use it. So I started an auction business, or a thrift store that I later transitioned to an auction business a few years ago, and so I sold most of it then, and that business sadly didn't end up working out, so I lost a pretty sizable chunk of money on that. I do still have a nice little stash of gold and silver, but I didn't really cash in, so to speak, for the sake of getting more money, although I was lucky in that when I sold, it was significantly above where it is now. So I made a bunch of money on the gold and silver. I mean, by the time I'd sold it, I'd basically doubled my average price. I sold it at a very, very opportune time. So I still am big on gold and silver. I still have a nice chunk, but it's not nearly as big as you see in the 800-ounce silver dump video where I pour it all in the treasure chest. Alan McCabe says, I think it's already been mentioned, but I'm also curious to your preferred brand / maker of knives and or bladed tools and weapons. Without a doubt, if I had to choose one specific manufacturer for knives, like if I was going to be thrown on a deserted island or something, you say you're going to get one knife, a random knife from this manufacturer, it would be Cold Steel. I love all their knives that I've ever had, and everything from their $10 like Kudu up to their hundreds of dollars knives. Everything is awesome and made to be used, which I think is the most important thing. Everything comes razor sharp, everything comes strong as hell and ready to take abuse, and they're all attractively priced too, and I just like all their stuff anyway. I mean, flipping through a catalog, even if I didn't know anything about their how good quality they actually were, I would still like a lot of their stuff. I have a decent number of their knives, and without a doubt I can say that's my preferred brand maker of knives. As far as is there anything more than that question? Oh yeah, and bladed tools and weapons. So they have a lot of stuff. They've got machetes and swords and knives and push daggers, and they got a lot of stuff I definitely recommend you checking out. And they've actually done a series or not a series, but they released a DVD that they send out with some of their orders called Proof, where they Cold Steel Proof, where they actually torture test and use their knives and a bunch of random stuff. So they show how strong the locks are. They show them cutting through big hunks of meat, and they're pretty funny watching these fat old guys like hack away at turkeys and stuff. But it definitely shows you that the knives are not just all show, no go. There's plenty of go, and they're definitely useful. And I have several of their knives, never had any issues with them. They're all razor sharp and strong as hell. Joe Primal says, why do you spell humongous wrong? I don't know if maybe this is serious or not. For those of you who may not know, I'm not trying to say the Lord Humongous as in big or huge. The Lord Humongous is actually the name of a character from the second Mad Max movie, Road Warrior. And that's how it's spelled in the movie, is actually humongous. It's not humongous. The name is just humongous. It's not a real word. It doesn't mean anything. The character's name is just the Lord Humongous. And that's what it's based off of. Malcolm Small says, after food, shelter, and ammo, what is the next item in your prepping? Well, if I had food, shelter, and ammo, my next item would definitely be water. If you're assuming that water is under food, so you have food, water, shelter, and ammo, then my next item would definitely be energy sources, whether that's gas for cooking, whether that's wood, whether that's solar panels. That would definitely be my next item on the list. It says, I consider seeds as part of my food stores. Sure, you can consider them food stores. I think they're going to be hard to... I have mixed emotions about seeds as part of a prepping situation because I have some. Obviously, it's just too easy not to. I plant stuff as a hobby anyway, so in that sense, it's fine to have seeds around. But like I was mentioning before, I mean, you would really have to be committed to a full-blown kind of homestead, self-sufficient lifestyle to really get the benefit of storing seeds. Because otherwise, if you think that you're just going to wait till the shit hits the fan and then run out in your backyard and start planting seeds, you're going to have a rude awakening. It takes a lot more prep, a lot more work, and a lot more of a kind of a mini ecosystem base, for lack of a better word, that you have to create to be able to garden effectively in a situation where you can't just run to Lowe's and get compost or fertilizer, or you can't just turn on your hose and water your plants. So, in that sense, I think seeds for most people will be useless. But it definitely will not hurt you to have them around. But yeah, after food, water, shelter, ammo, energy would be my next one. Donald Louis says, I have 2 questions. What is a good budget for starting for WROL preparation? Overall, not specific to hurricanes, tornadoes, etc. And what categories or areas should you focus your start on? And then the next question is, what consumable products could you recommend with near infinite shelf life? Thinking anything from certain foods, water, candles, etc. Okay, so first question, good starting budget for WROL preparation. Now, that WROL means without rule of law, so that's normally considered like a situation where police and fire and stuff like that isn't operating. I'm just going to answer the question substituting general shit hit the fan scenario, general preparedness, because I think there was a video, I don't know if I actually did this video or not, but I think I did the video, The Myth of WROL, where things have to get really heinous to where there's no rule of law. Normally it just gets like a third world country where the rule of law will not be there when you need it, and it will be there when you not need it. So you're going to get robbed and the police won't be anywhere, but if you try to like walk downtown with your gun, you're going to get arrested. So you just get all the negative aspects of a shitty, like shit hit the fan scenario, and none of the benefits of no rule of law. So, but just a general prepping budget, it all depends. I mean, it depends on, like I mentioned before, to get you to that level of, to where your life is enhanced and it doesn't start to wear on you in any bad ways. I think just basic 30, 60 day preparedness level, if you set aside something like $1,000, $2,000, you can do a lot with that. A lot. And, it's not going to be long-term stuff like digging a well, solar panels, but you can definitely get 30 days worth of food for way, way less than that. You can get a gun if you already don't have it. You can get some water if you don't have it. You can get a lot of little stuff for a couple grand. Certainly even just $1,000. And what categories or areas should you focus your start on? You should focus your start on the areas that you would need most quickly if things went to shit. So if all of a sudden you couldn't go to the store, what would you need for the next 30 days? You would need water. That's always number one. That's the thing that you're going to need before anything else. Then you're going to need food and a way to cook it. And then I would definitely throw in some sort of level of protection. If you don't already have a gun, just get a $200 shotgun or a $300 Glock or something like that. And then beyond that, you're just going to want to expand those categories. Throw in a little hygiene stuff, some first aid stuff, and basically just everything you use on a normal day-to-day basis. you have to have those if you couldn't go to the store to get them. And that's what you should focus your focus your efforts on, your start. All right, next part of the question is, what consumable products could you recommend with near infinite shelf life? Foods, water, candles, etc. Well, infinite, definitely doesn't have to be infinite, so I'll focus on things that would last longer than you. So anything that will outlive you, I will consider as having a basically infinite shelf life, because for our purposes, if we're dead, then it doesn't matter if it rots. Unless you want to bequeath your prepping supplies, but I don't think that's realistic. So obviously candles, he mentions, those have an infinite shelf life as far as you're concerned. They're definitely going to outlast you. Water, other than getting contaminated with algae or something like that, you could still filter it. Water has an indefinite shelf life. Ammunition will outlast, if it's stored dry and isn't damaged or anything like that, that'll definitely last decades. Canned foods, now there's supposed to, I've read that says that if the seals aren't breached and the can doesn't rust or anything like that, they will be edible basically indefinitely. It'll just be a tasteless mush and it'll lose some nutritional value, but it won't be spoiled or it won't be bad for you. Certainly dry stored goods like rice, it's vacuum sealed properly and with the oxygen absorbers and everything in there. And that can last for decades. And certainly any sort of gear that doesn't have anything that will break down will last for a long time as well. But for consumable items, gas is probably the closest for fuel that will last the longest, like propane. They will eventually seep out through these micro pores in the metal and stuff, but we're talking decades. So that would be one of the better fuels to be stored, other than maybe wood. I mean, wood, as long as if it's off the ground and dry, it's not going to really rot for decades and decades, so that would last as long as, or just as long as well. I think that's it, man. I got through all the questions, and it hasn't even been an hour yet. It's been about 45 minutes by my count. So if you guys are still listening, I appreciate it. If you guys have any more questions or topics that you would like to see me cover, I definitely appreciate it. Just let me know. I have a list that I've already come up with for some topics going forward. My initial plan is to do a podcast about once a week. That's going to be my goal. If I don't manage to do that, don't sue me. I'm not, nothing is written in stone, but that is my goal going forward, is probably to do one a week. And, I don't think I'll have any problems coming up with material for that. If you guys have any suggestions or anything that you noticed about this one, or that you'd like to see done differently, or things that you think were done well, or you like the way they're done, let me know. And like I mentioned before, I will have the audio on YouTube as well, and I will be able to have it, if you want to download it, just come to the rulethewasteland.com on the podcast tab, and you can hit the SoundCloud downloads there. And I'll let everybody know when I get it up on iTunes, and I'll take a look at I'll take a look at that site Stitcher too and see what that's all about. But for the time being, it'll just be on SoundCloud, on the player, hosted on rulethewasteland.com. So appreciate everybody who submitted questions, and I'll talk to you guys next time.